Okay, thank you, everyone. I think I'll start with my presentation and then we can go to the regular kind of meeting. I am here to report back on a trip that I made in January to Nicaragua as a participant in a delegation that was designed to learn more about Nicaragua and learn about women and women's empowerment in Nicaragua. So I'm not an expert on Nicaragua. I'm speaking as somebody who learned by being there things that I would not have learned or experienced otherwise. And now I am going to try to share my screen, and my very dear neighbor is here with me to try to make sure that I can do that. Oh, Ellen, you need to let me share the screen.
Okay, here you go. This is
Okay.
a business meeting where Virginia is going to talk about her trip to Nicaragua. So you can listen if you want.
Okay, and gonna try to put this in presentation mode. You're seeing my screen now.
So it's that later.
Yes. Okay. So here we are. When I like,
If you want to exit.
okay. So the delegation was called Power and Protagonism. And we were there in the early part of January. I arrived on January 5th and left on the 15th. We stayed at a guest house, Casa Benjamin Linder. This guest house is owned by a solidarity group called Jubilee House. And they've been doing solidarity work in Nicaragua for probably 30 years now. They are a faith-based organization, although people of different faiths and not proselytizing faith. They live in community there with the goal of being of service and to work on what Nicaraguans want to work. This Casa Benjamin Linder was named after an American who did solidarity work there during the Contra War. He was someone who was from the West Coast, graduated in engineering, and he went there and lived there for quite a while before landing an engineering job. His sideline was that he was a circus performer. He rode a unicycle and wore clown outfits. And his first job in Nicaragua was performing in the circus before he got a job working on water systems and electrical systems. But he was revered as somebody who lived in solidarity with people and who regrettably was murdered during the Contra War. This is when you first come through the gate, this is what it looks like. It's a very welcoming space, beautiful gardens, and there are murals all around the building and on the building. And it's designed to be a meeting space, designed to be welcoming, and designed to help educate about the history there and also promote leaders in nonviolent struggle. This is our delegation plus a few members, and this is one of the murals at Casa Benjamin Linder. They had a large patio space on the back where we often met for reflections after meetings and had breakfast and meals there. And in the murals, there's a celebration of their moving towards clean energy, using water, using wind and solar, and also celebration of their agricultural roots and connection to the land. I found we were in Managua, which is the capital city. It's a sprawling city, crowded between 3 and 4 million people there. Half of the country's population live in Managua. It appeared to me to be very economically diverse, rich in history, surrounded by water. They have this beautiful, lively riverfront with parks, restaurants, playground equipment. It used to be a very dangerous, dark area. Now there's lots of lighting. And the city was decked out for Christmas. It was like a huge, big deal. This is the National Palace, and you see in front this big photo of Sandino, national hero, revered for having amassed a peasant army that drove out William Walker back in the earlier part of the 1900s. William Walker was an American, was in power there, going back to the Monroe Doctrine and U.S. expansionism in Central and Latin America. And Sandino is revered because he was often in the poorer rural parts of the country and wanted to support peasant people and having a peasant army. He also is noted because he and his wife, Blanca, were said to work in a 50-50 capacity, that she was not just his wife, that she was an equal partner. And that I heard about over and over, this 50-50 ideal when talking with government officials. Here's another mural dedicated to Sandino. This is that waterfront area, part of it, a small, teeny part of it, lit up at night. Managua loves peace. One of our guides, Harold, who is Nicaraguan, grew up in Nicaragua, lives in Nicaragua, would frequently say, Nicaragua is sick of war. We've had plenty of war. We want peace. To me, it was incredible to see this huge lit up display on one of their biggest parks in the capital city that you could probably see from an airplane. This is one of the bars, restaurant, lively, lit up on a Saturday night, people out having fun. And I will say that I, as a city dweller, feel very much that it's important to have public spaces, open spaces, parks, places where people can go and have recreation. This is part of that park in the daylight. And at night, all these trees light up in different colors. But it was a huge, modern, clean space where people were just out, enjoying a weekend day. We were taken to a church that was a very kind of funky church dedicated to working with the poor. And one of the things that day was that they were talking a lot about their concern and their solidarity for Palestinians. And they had made this altar with Jesus in the rubble. Nicaragua, by the way, did sign on to South Africa's claim in the criminal World Criminal Court that Israel is committing genocide. Nicaragua signed on, along with other countries. But that was on that day when we were in that church, there were lots of prayers for Palestinians and talk of solidarity and concern for their situation. Probably because of having lived through war, people feeling like they know what it's like for to be oppressed and to have a large oppressor. We went to a small clinic, we went to a regional hospital, and we went to a big city hospital. Nicaragua, at least the people we encountered, were very, very, very proud of their healthcare services, their free healthcare for everyone, and a little bit like Cuba, going back to, I should have said this in the intro, that Nicaragua, going back to the 60s, had a revolution similar to Cuba's in terms of having similar goals in addressing income inequality, redistribution of land, healthcare, education. This healthcare center was in a place called Nueva Dia. And Nueva Dia was a community outside of the city. People had been displaced after an earthquake. From an outsider point of view, like me or somebody from this country, it looked kind of run down. And the houses were small, they had dirt roads, but they had this healthcare center that was like the big feature of their community. And it includes dental care, includes prenatal, there's a psychologist, there's a full medical team. Anybody could go in there and get medical care. They also hired over 30 people in the community that they trained as outreach workers that go and meet with people in their homes and do things in the community all the time that are linking the community with the healthcare center. And their citizens painted the murals. Their murals were like everywhere that we went. And some people called them popular education. This was outside of the community room at that health center, something painted by the children in that neighborhood, Nueva Dia. And we were invited to go out with people, which I did, to do home visits with their outreach workers. So the older woman that's sitting down, they're checking her blood pressure, they're checking her blood sugar, and later administering insulin and reminding her what she needs to do to keep her blood sugar down and encouraging her to come into the clinic if she needs it. This was part of the larger hospital that we went to outside of the city. And again, you see the Cuba solidarity side there. This eye clinic was originally staffed with doctors from Cuba. Now they have their own doctors, and they're very, very proud of it. They do an incredible number. I forget if it was 200 a month or 200 a week eye surgeries there, things like removing cataracts. And again, it's free, and people freely come there and get this service, and they called it a miracle clinic. And we were told many times that there still is a very close alliance with Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela. This medical center included a separate building that had a dormitory for women with high-risk pregnancies. There were a couple women there when we were there. I didn't feel like I should have taken their picture because I felt like that would violate their confidentiality. This room actually had about 10 or 12 beds. And these, in some cases, young girls or women generally with a high-risk pregnancy could stay here for a month, 2 months, whatever they needed before or after their delivery to have extra support and extra medical attention. There was a building across from this that was a medical center for people with TB. This was a bigger hospital. We were invited in to meet with their medical staff. We were shown around the building. They were proud that this hospital, unlike the clinics, they could do like an MRI or a CAT scan if somebody needed it. They also showed us pictures of incredible plastic surgery services that they had delivered. And they, again, very, very proud that this is where people can come in free of cost. Medication is free, and talk to us about expanding their health care and plans to develop 9 new hospitals in the country. We were told that over 60% of the national budget, I believe the figure was 66%, is spent on health care. We were invited into Parliament, and we were told that in their constitution, their current priorities are 1, reducing poverty, 2, improving health, 3, increasing education, and 4, protecting human rights. And the women here are all members of Parliament. We were told to each introduce themselves and explain what their specific area within Parliament is, and told us that the Parliament in Nicaragua right now has 51% women on the Parliament. Oh. And while we were there, at least I noticed that men were serving coffee to us and women were giving the presentation, which I think if we were there, or even in our country 30 or 40 years ago, that would not be the case. We were invited to meet with the director of what was called a creative economy. And this, I believe, was in a former Bank of America building, which we were told that after one of the earthquakes, Bank of America hit the road and this building was left. And it's one of the few tall buildings in where people, because of the history of earthquakes, usually only have 1 or 2 story buildings. This might be conference room was where we went to learn about their creative economy, which includes promoting agriculture, promoting art, promoting the development of cooperatives, and promoting science. And he talked about how they very strategically award grants across different districts of the country and to different groups so that it will be diverse, including women and cultural minorities. And this was part of this very high-tech presentation that it giving examples of their funding the arts. We also met with women police officers who talked about working hand in hand with human services and psych services. They told us that they go in and investigate crimes and that they take domestic violence very seriously, and that is punishable. They also mentioned that they do not always carry guns, and that in the country, you can own a gun if you are a private citizen, but you cannot own an assault weapon. We met, after meeting with police, we met with the director for investigations, the ombudsman for LGBT community. And then in the evening, we had an evening meeting with members of LGBTQ, which they referred to also as sexually diverse, come and talk to us about how things are changing in the country. The man who was standing gave a personal story about how he was rejected by family when they discovered that he was gay. And the discrimination and rejection he felt like contributed to in his early years being a drug addict and an alcoholic and living on the margins of society. He said that because of how things are changed, there are now laws that no one can be discriminated against based on their gender or their sexual preference. He's working in this ombudsman office. He has a job. He's working with other LGBT community people, and that their quality of life is very different, and that nationally the attitude has shifted a lot. The person next to him is a trans woman who talked about having gotten through university and the impact that she's made in her community. So, and I'll just mention that Cassie Benjamin is in the back here. We went outside of the city. It was about a 3-hour drive to Sky to meet with women who have a cooperative, and they call it the Goddesses. And the Goddesses Cooperative, they're beekeepers, they grow coffee, they grow hibiscus, they make tea, they make wine, and they not only sell these things domestically, but people in the international market can buy it. And these are members of the cooperative that we met with. The small woman to the left, three people in with the black and white skirt. I would guesstimate that she was in her 60s. She gave a very, very personal story. She said when she was growing up, that being a campesino was something being looked down upon, being a woman, that she remembers being smacked around, being told and being treated like she was only good for grinding the cornmeal, making the tortillas, and making babies. And she said that after being involved in this cooperative, that she continued her primary education. I think she had said that she'd only been to like a second or third grade. And not only did she do that, but she went and obtained university and completed university education. And she also talked about the work. She said it was scary at first going in to be a beekeeper, but she put on the equipment and now she does it. They talked about in their cooperative, making sure, giving attention to trying to be very intergenerational and sharing power, sharing leadership. There was somebody in our group who asked a question, well, if somebody in our country wants to start a cooperative, what advice would you give them? And I think it was the woman in the on the end of the white t-shirt said something like, well, first you have to get your mission statement and you got to get your bylaws. It was like, not like this, little campesina country bumpkin kind of response at all. I mean, it was clearly people who had learned how to have a very professional operation. And behind them, there are buildings where they showed us how each building will have a separate product in it, whether it's the tea, the coffee, and how they're meeting all the sanitary codes that they need to meet for this international trade. We then went to a group called the FEMS, and the FEMS Fund Initiative for Women and Girls Education Cooperatives, agricultural venture, etc. But in their meeting room, what they had done is they had set up this altar for us. And it's all with local produce. It's like the leaves or the flower, or local flowers, beans. There are little jars of the honey that they sell, candles that they make, the cup of coffee where they grow the coffee, and this altar to Benjamin Linder, who was murdered in their area while he was working on, I forget if it was the electrical system or water system for that area. And so he's, again, still revered there. And the FEMS talked a lot about how in their work, they have reimagined and embraced this campesina identity, that it's not just that they're people from the country who are illiterate or uneducated or unsophisticated, that they are people who are protecting the earth and feeding their people. And we were told that Nicaragua now can grow and produce the food for something like 70 or 80% of their own needs. In Australia, there was a museum that we went to where they had photographs and memorabilia from the time of the U.S. Contra War, which lasted about 10 years and in which 50,000 people were killed back in the late 70s into the 80s. That seems like it would still be a very vivid memory for a lot of people. We went to go see a volcano. Before we saw the volcano, we went to the museum next to the volcano, which was full of artifacts and also murals, including this, which to me was a very beautiful mural celebrating connection with the land and the indigenous culture. This was another mural in a different city. Behind the mural, there are all these stands with people selling handicrafts and art. So the summary that I would have from the trip, from my experience, which again is, brief, I was there for like a little over a week. I feel like the Nicaraguans have been able to make a lot of progress on their goals because they're in a peacetime. They've come out of a neoliberal era. In the last election, Daniel Ortega got over 70% of the vote. We did see pictures here and there of Ortega, and I didn't hear anybody say anything negative about Ortega, but again, I didn't talk to everybody in the country, but it seemed to be that, and from what I did hear from people who've been on previous delegations, that they're in a very good place compared to where they've been 10 or 20 years ago, that they didn't see as much hunger, that the quality of life of people seemed significantly better. I personally like that they have the 50-50 rule on women's participation in government. I love that their constitutional goals are reducing poverty, promoting health, increasing education, and protecting human rights. I'm impressed that they have green electricity, 70% coming from wind and solar. I'm told that if you went there like 15 years ago, there wouldn't have been the availability of electricity that there is now. I'm also impressed that they grow their own food, about that they can make 70 or 80% of their own needs. I like that they ban private citizens from owning assault weapons, and I found the people to be very friendly and welcoming. So that's my presentation.
Wow, that was so wonderful. It added to the informal talk we had in our meeting last time before our letter writing group, Virginia. Really wonderful.
Thank you.
I have a question. As you know, in this country, domestic violence is still very, very active, and women often need the support, the financial support from the breadwinner. What are the details of getting a handle on this? I heard that these violent acts are punishable in jails. Can you expand on that?
Not as much as you would like. What I can say is there was a lot of small business in the country, and I was told that anybody can start their own little business. Like, you can put your stand by the side of the road if you want to sell your fried bananas or your little artwork or something like that. And that, again, there's this free education, and there's a combination of people who are employed, like the health workers, the police. There are public sector jobs, more public sector jobs than there used to be. And there is help for people to get started. So whether, the extent to which they can help a woman get her own income, I don't know how long or how short that process is. But again, they've got the free education, and they've got the free healthcare. So those are big things to start with. The other thing I heard is that when they go in, like if they get police or social services here that child's not going to school, they will go and visit the family, and they will try to find out, do they need like shoes for the children or a backpack or something like that. So there are supports to help. I'm not sure about the financial piece. That's a very good question.
Thank you.
I also was told that currently abortion is illegal, but birth control is widely available, including pills, IUD.
Good. Ginger?
Hi, thank you, Virginia. And how do they achieve a 50-50 ratio between men and women in Parliament? And do they not have women running against men? Like in each district, do they have one woman chosen out of a contest amongst women plus one man chosen out of a contest among just men?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Parliament members are voted on or selected. I did hear over and over part of our city tour began with visiting a museum that was dedicated to Blanca, the wife of Sandino. And that's where they talked about this 50-50 coming, being rooted in her being seen as an equal partner to him. And how they specifically operationalize that, I'm not sure. I could take the question back to somebody from the leader of the delegation and try to get back to you on it.
Oh, I'd be interested. Thank you.
Robin, you started, there you go.
Yeah, I'd love to. It's wonderful you're doing this report, and we're hoping here in Burlington to have some folks going down on a delegation. It got put back, so maybe it's going to be in April or something. Jill Clark Golub, who is from Nicaragua and a translator. But anyway, I wanted to ask about journalism and newspapers there, because Peace Brigades International, which I receive their mailing, is very, very concerned about the lack of free speech, or, I mean, they call Nicaragua a police state, I think was the word they used, which is hard to believe. And because it doesn't seem to jibe with what what I hear from the progressive media, that Ortega has carried out a wave of arrests before the November presidential election. Now, when was that? I think that
It was 2021, I think.
okay, yeah.
They did have they had an attempted coup in 2018.
Yeah.
First of all, Robin, I owe you a thank you, because I met you at your retreat in the summer, which is how I found out about this delegation.
Hmm.
I owe you a thank you, Robin, because I met Jill at your retreat in the summer, which
Yes.
was how I found out about this delegation. So
Okay.
I would not have made this trip if I hadn't been at your retreat in August. I didn't see newspapers there. I saw everybody on their cell phone, on the plane, in the street. Oh, I forgot a personal story. I had a good experience when I get to the airport. I couldn't connect on my cell phone to internet, so I could not send a message to one of the organizers for the delegation that I had arrived in the airport. And there was a woman guard in the airport, and she saw that I was having trouble, and she came over to me and she called on her phone, and she stayed with me until she knew that there was going to be somebody to come and get me. So it was very, very sweet. But I don't know the extent to which people have free press or don't have free press. I did not myself see newspapers there, but I did, again, see everybody. It seemed like everybody was on their cell phone, so I would imagine that people can connect to information. They did have an attempted coup in 2018. I don't know the details of that. They do. The country is no longer solidly Roman Catholic. There's been an influx of a lot of evangelical groups. And I think there are mixed feelings about the evangelical groups in terms of their influence in the country. Whether or not some of them are for the current government or against the current government. There was a strong feeling from our delegation that our message that I got is that
Set me up.
People in Nicaragua are sick of colonialism and they're sick of the US influence. And they do not want people from the US to be telling them what to do. They do have Walmart there. They do have trade with China. China's providing them with new buses in the city. They're getting rid of some of the old Bluebird school buses. They got some very modern, nice looking new buses from China. And from what we were told, they're looking forward to more trade with China. So that doesn't answer your question about journalism. We did have one member who visited our delegation on and off, and she was from El Salvador, and she had been doing journalistic work in the US and in Canada. And she said she had come to Managua because she felt like this is a place where she could do her work more freely than she could do it in Canada. For what that's worth. Okay.
Yeah, if there are no other questions, I, as usual, have more. One of my questions remaining is, did they get hit hard by COVID and how did they manage that? I'm sure Cuba had their vaccines available. I'm just curious.
Yeah, they were hit hard by COVID. When we were visiting the big hospital, they showed us pictures of people in PPE, and they were very angry that the U.S. would not provide any vaccines to them.
And Cuba
And they had
was slow.
dedicated teams working on COVID, and they lost people to COVID.
And about the buses, are they electrified? Are they
No,
fossil?
they're still using petrol for their trucks, buses, motorcycles, private cars.
Okay. Anybody else? Would you want to go back, Virginia?
Sure. You know, I wouldn't have a reason to not want to go back. It's very, very hot there. It was easily over 90 degrees most days.
Humid too, or just dry?
I don't remember it being humid, but it was very hot. Go ahead, Ginger.
Let's see. I'll think of it later. Sorry.
Okay. But I think it's like a lot of things. People say this about, they used to say it about Palestine. They say about Cuba. The best thing to do is, go yourself. I mean, you will have your own impression. The advantage to me of going with a group is that I don't think as a private citizen I would have been able to learn as much. I certainly wouldn't have gone to talk to a director of the hospital, gone into the parliament, met with department heads, anything like that, if I had just been a private citizen. But go ahead, Ginger.
How would you rate or what percentage of the Spanish that was spoken in your midst could you understand readily?
I
And
could probably stand
did-
about 15 or 20%.
that you could
Yeah.
understand in Spanish? How
We
much?
were given time sets and somebody would translate for us.
Oh, okay.
Well, thank you, everybody.
I have a question.
Okay,
I'm wondering about what the terrain was like. Where were you located? And
we were mostly in Managua. There's a lot of water, and it's very tropical. Lots
were
of
you
plants.
close? Were you close to the coast or?
No, we were not there. There's the Pan-American Highway runs through part of the country, but the road system is not good. And there's supposed to be tremendous cultural difference between people in Managua and the coast, the Caribbean coast.
And where is?
They're going to have a separate delegation to the Caribbean coast.
Forgive my ignorance, but I've never studied Nicaragua this way, and I was just wondering where it's located on the map.
It's in Central America, close to
No,
Costa Rica.
within Nicaragua. It's
Where is Managua?
yeah.
You have to go back to the map.
Okay.
We did get out a little bit when we went to Esteli.
Okay, I can share what I pulled up here.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And then Ellen has a question. So if you Managua is closer to the Pacific Ocean, but not on the ocean.
Is it right next to that smaller lake?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate
Thank you. Ellen? You're muted, Ellen. You're muted.
I get the NICA notes and I hope everybody will, the Nicaragua newsletter that comes out from the NICA group. Maybe some of you, I'm sure, get that. But there, it's very regional. So they cover other countries. So I'm wondering, one, did you get the feeling that they're being strengthened and happy because they've got regional organizations also to represent them from others in Central America? And that are they concerned? The NICA notes talks about concerns related to future more imperialistic intrusions, not just on them, but on the general area, because they're very friendly with Venezuela. And you mentioned a couple of countries they're working with now, in Cuba, of course. Did they say anything about that kind of, first of all, the concerns they have about the future, like the Southern Command, the U.S. Southern Command is there. And we hear a lot about that they're still ready to do what the U.S. ready to do there, what they're doing elsewhere in the world. And the other is the regionalism. Did you sense regionalism in your trip?
Well, it wasn't the focus of the trip. I did notice when we went to Esteli, where they had the museum about the Contra War and the Women's Cooperative. They also, in that area, they grow a lot of rice, they grow tobacco, and they're supposed to have cigars that are on par with the Cuban cigars. The hotel that we stayed in, there were all these motorcycle crews that were going through that were from Costa Rica. I don't know the extent to which we were told that the hotel was right on the Pan-American Highway. So I don't know the extent to which they relate or don't relate. Like I'm kind of wondering if they have also an immigration problem of people coming there because free healthcare, free education.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
definitely have a brain drain problem where people who are very professional there can go elsewhere and command higher salaries. I did hear repeatedly, again, from Harold, who lives there, grew up there, has always lived there, that they do not want US interference. And they are weary because there was the attempted coup in 2018. I did hear that they're happy to be out of a neoliberal period where the rich got richer and the poor got poorer, and it seems like they're more committed to their original revolutionary goals of reducing poverty, redistributing land, helping people get title to land, promoting education, promoting healthcare. They, like Cuba, are under sanctions from the US, like Cuba and Venezuela. And I'm sure they prefer not to be under sanctions from the US. I mean, the reason I think that we're treated well and they wanted to show us things is they want those of us who return from these delegations to go back and say, wait a minute, Nicaragua's not our enemy. We don't need to be afraid of them. We shouldn't have sanctions on them. Also share that in my work, I work with a colleague who used to do a lot of work in Chelsea with new immigrants. And he said, I rarely saw anybody from Nicaragua. So to me, that's telling. And I do recall that one of the personal testimonies from one of the women in the cooperative, where we met with people from the Goddess Cooperative, was that because of being part of this cooperative and being able to earn her own money, she does not think of leaving the country. She thinks of remaining. I also got to show you, we got these, when we went to go visit, it was either the woman in charge of women's affairs or parliament. We got these t-shirts. Delegate women out front. So,
Oh, okay.
Can I ask a question?
sure, go ahead, Jay.
The immigration rate.
I don't know what the immigration rate is.
Okay.
Sorry. Ginger?
Can you describe where in Nicaragua the trail of people trying to escape from their country in South America, or further south in Central America up to the United States? Where did it go through the country of Nicaragua?
I don't know where it went through. I did hear that if people, one of the factors in people leaving is there's a part of the country that is in the dry zone, which is a big problem in Central America. That there, because of climate change, there are huge swaths where people cannot grow food the way that they used to grow food and support themselves in the way that they used to support themselves.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a pervasive problem. Even in our country, we've got spots that are just don't have adequate water, especially along the Colorado River. Wow. It's coming to the end of the hour, and it's been a wonderful hour, Virginia. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Virginia.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. I put the NICA notes in the chat, the link for NICA notes.
And they have, for people who are interested, they have regular events that you can join on Zoom to learn more about specific topics. They had one last month on clean energy, what they were doing on clean energy. And they'll have one in March on this delegation that I was part of.
I think the NICA notes will tell you about it too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. That's good
Yes,
too.
thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Yeah.
And Ellen, thank you for playing host.
I'm sorry, I didn't do it.
No, I mean the other Ellen.
Oh, okay.
Ellen, Ellen Thomas, you're a real trooper again. Thank you to
Thank you.
And
Well, you're
thanks
most
to those
welcome.
who are new to our meeting and joined.